Sorry, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to support this bill on the onset and on the face of it because I support the concept. I support the concept of marginalized areas being given extra funds to channel development to them. I also support because it alleviates the burden of the already strained county budget. I also like the fact that it is project-specific and it is also area-specific. But Madam Speaker, I also have an issue with the formula, just like my other colleagues have said before. And Nairobi has been assumed to be a rich county. Just because we have rich estates like Karen, Muthaiga, we ignore the slum dwellers of Nairobi. Article 204 of the Constitution that creates this bill is very clear that it is this bill and these funds are supposed to benefit the marginalized areas. Madam Speaker, in Nairobi, we have a lot of marginalized area and that are also densely populated. Nairobi is the home of big slums like Kibera, Mathare, Korokocho, and the Kayabas. And I'm sure, Madam Speaker, you've never heard of a slum called Silanga, etc. The deplorable state that these citizens, Kenyan citizens, are living in have continued to be ignored by policy makers and also legislators in this and the other houses, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I happen to be privileged to have served at the board of Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company for 3 years before I became a senator. And in Nairobi Water, we had mapped Nairobi into 7 regions. We have the central region, which includes the CBD and its environs. We have the southern region. And Madam Speaker, we saw it wise and necessary to have another region, a separate region that is called that it included all the slums that was called I forget the name, but the slums and all those regions were under a region, regardless of the location and the geographical area. And Madam Speaker, how we dealt with the slums was not the same way we dealt with other regions, in terms of billing, in terms of water supply, because they are more populated and they are less privileged. So, Madam Speaker, I want this House and I want the policymakers, the CRAs, to deal with these regions and to recognize them as marginalized, because they are marginalized, Madam Speaker. We are talking about Korokocho, Soweto, the Viwandani, the Riruta, and all these other areas, Madam Speaker, that have been ignored. Just because they neighbor Karen or they neighbor Muthaiga and other rich estates does not mean they should be ignored. Madam Speaker, they are not children of a lesser God. And Madam Speaker, we have been crying as Nairobi for these slum dwellers, and we have been ignored over the years. And we are going to resort even to unorthodox means. Madam Speaker, as the women of Nairobi and the women of Lainisaba and Kiboro and Muji wa Huruma, we are going to undress in this town, Madam Speaker, so that we can get the attention of the policymakers and this House and the legislators, Madam Speaker, because Nairobi is not a rich county, Madam Speaker. We are not a rich county. Just because we are the seat of government and we happen to have rich estates here and there does not mean that we are rich, Madam Speaker. And enough of this talk. We are going to find solutions for ourselves. Just like Governor Wavinya Ndeti said, that Kambas have their own ways of solving things. Nairobi, we are going to find a way of solving this means and having our slum dwellers recognized.
Senator Karen Nyamu has today threatened to walk undressed just for her to attract the attention of her fellow policymakers. And mind you, this is a whole senator complaining that she does not get the required attention from her fellow policymakers. What of you, the ordinary Kenyan. Speaking of the intonation of her words from that video, then you can clearly see that she was uttering those words out of desperation. And if I can just draw you some flashback back at Bomas when President Ruto was launching the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, I can't remember the detail very well, but one thing I remember is there was a charter that the Kenya Kwanza regime had signed with the Kenyan women that if they assume office, they would fulfill as per the needs of the Kenyan women.
Samuel Ruto, on behalf of Kenya Kwanza Alliance, do hereby commit to actualize the 2/3 gender principle.
Ruto, who spoke at Kenya Kwanza Women Conference at Nyamu Stadium in Nairobi, claimed his government will be a game changer in the country's system of governance, as women will be at the center stage of the decision-making table.
Women will become equal partners, will have equal say, will occupy equal positions in the highest decision-making organ of the Republic of Kenya.
Ruto, who exuded confidence that Kenya Kwanza will have majority of elected women, claimed his government will focus on uplifting women across the country and ensure half of cabinet appointments are women.
That we shall allocate 50% of all cabinet positions to the women of Kenya.
At the same time, the DP took a swipe at Ruto.
I'm still wondering where this charter went, or maybe were they doing it for PR? If this trend is going to go on this way, I kid you not, it will be next to impossible for the government to inculcate their agenda, simply because day in, day out, Kenyans across the political divide are losing trust with the Kenya Kwanza regime. The enemy remains to be poverty and the high cost of living. And that is why up to this juncture, Kenyans across the nation have resumed to do anything so long as it is going to draw some cash in their pockets.
Wadau, hii ni mafuta unaona hapa, unaona? Ni mafuta fresh fry, ingine ni fresh fry, ingine ni top fry. Hizi mafuta sote nilienda kule Nairobi nikaambiwa na jamaa. Wakaniambia kwamba tuko na promotion na tunapeana mafuta. Mimi nilipoona kwamba kuna promotion na hapa mafuta ni cheap, ilibidi ninunue hizo mafuta. Ukifungua vizuri, mafuta yenyewe iko na seal. Acha nifungue. Mafuta yenyewe iko na seal. Unaona? Mafuta iko na seal. Lakini sasa ile kitu ambacho nashangaa ni kama wameona sasa conning lazima waangalie ile njia yenye wanaweza kulia nzuri, wanakuwekea mpaka sili ambapo utanunua mafuta wewe utaona sili iko sawa kabisa, sili iko sawa, lakini ndani sio mafuta. Kama hii sasa nimepomoa nikafikiri ni mafuta, wamerusha oil, oil imerushwa ndani. Hii sasa wacha nifungue, leta hii kisu kidogo, wacha nifungue uone taratibu kidogo, uone. Unaona? Haya, unaona? Sawa. Unaona? Ya tufungue, tuangalie. Ukiangalia kwa karibu, ndani utaona ni mafuta. Ndani unaona ni mafuta. Unaona? Lakini ni maji. Unaona? Ni maji ya sewage. Inanuka mbaya sana, maji ya sewage imechanganywa, ambapo sasa hivyo ndivyo nililambwa. Unaona? Nililambwa kwamba ninanunua mafuta ya promotion. Sasa hapa nimepromotiwa kabisa. So namwambia Nairobi, nataka mchanuke pia msibiwe. Hapa mangiri zimeenda, mangiri. Hapa mangiri zimeenda sababu.
Now, From where I sit, I strongly believe that for President William Samoei Ruto to deliver on his manifesto, then he must stop titillating his CSs and force them work so that they can deliver on his agendas. Simply because this government has to give value for money that they collect as taxes, because currently the high cost of living is very high and skyrocketing. And as I come to the penultimate part of this video, kindly, in case if you're watching me for the very first time, just consider hitting on the subscribe button. If you have been watching my videos and you have not subscribed, kindly do consider hitting on the subscribe button. And before I leave, let me leave you with a quote that states, "Freedom comes from the oppressed and is never negotiated with the oppressor." Thank you, and may God bless you.